My husband drove me 3 hours into the Blue Ridge Mountains and left me at the entrance of a resort he couldn't afford, kissed my temple without looking me in the eye, and was back on the highway before my bag hit the lobby floor. 6 days later, I would stand in a courtroom and listen to a judge sentence him to 38 years. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm 31. I work as a radiology technician at Piedmont Regional Medical Center in Asheville. My husband, we'd been married 7 years, was named Aaron. He used to be good at making me feel chosen. That was the thing about him. He had this gift for making you feel like the most noticed person in the room. Then my parents died. March 2022. A gas leak at their house in Hendersonville while they slept. My mother and father, both 64, gone before the sun came up. The kind of loss that doesn't have language. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I showed up to work and ran scans on strangers' lungs and thought about nothing. Aaron handled everything. The funeral arrangements, the estate, the insurance claim. My parents had been careful people. My dad ran a small construction company for 30 years. My mother taught 3rd grade for 26. They left behind $2.4 million. I signed the paperwork Aaron put in front of me without reading it. I trusted him. He was my husband. That was my first mistake. I should have seen the signs earlier. They were there. I just didn't want to look directly at them, the way you avoid staring at something you know will hurt. The credit card statements I'd find crumpled in his car, balances I didn't recognize. The nights he'd go quiet mid-sentence, scrolling his phone, then pocket it the moment I came closer. The way our joint account kept dipping lower each month, even though his consulting work was apparently the best it had ever been. He had an excuse for everything. Aaron was very good at excuses. It was a Tuesday in October when he slid the brochure across the kitchen table. Ridgecrest Spa and Lodge, he said. 4 days, 3 nights, private cabin, hot springs, the whole thing. I looked at it. Ridgecrest was in the mountains outside Boone, 3 hours north, the kind of place we'd looked at for our 5th anniversary and decided we couldn't swing. We can't afford this, I said. I got a deal through a client. He was smiling, but the smile didn't travel past his mouth. You've been running on empty since your parents. You deserve this. I should have coffee at the counter. I should have asked which client. I should have asked to see the booking confirmation. I should have noticed that his hands, folded on the table, were trembling slightly at the knuckles. Instead, I said, when? This weekend. I'll drive you up Friday. The morning of, he was up before me. He made coffee, good coffee, the kind he used to make when we first got together, and set it on the nightstand without being asked. I lay there drinking it and thought maybe I'd been wrong to worry. Maybe this was him trying. Maybe the distance between us was grief on both sides, and this was his way of closing it. I packed light. Aaron hovered while I folded things into my bag. He checked the zipper twice, ran his hand along the outside pockets. When I asked what he was looking for, he laughed. Just making sure you didn't forget the charger. He kissed my forehead. It felt like a period at the end of a sentence. The drive north was mostly quiet. He had the radio on, classic rock, turned up enough to make real conversation difficult. I watched the mountains come up through the windshield, the elevation changing, the trees going golden red in the October light, and I kept almost saying something. I could feel it sitting in my chest, a question I didn't yet have words for. His phone rang twice. Both times he let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message a minute later when he thought I was looking out the window. Once I caught a fragment, a man's voice, clipped and matter-of-fact, confirmed for Saturday morning, trail guide checked in under the guest services roster, weather's clear. Aaron ended the audio, switched the radio station. Work? I asked. Client thing. He didn't elaborate. We pulled into the resort entrance at 2:20 in the afternoon. Aaron stopped at the drop-off lane, not the parking lot. He got out, lifted my bag from the trunk, set it on the pavement, and pulled me into a hug. It was brief. His arms were stiff. "I'll miss you," I said into his shoulder. I meant it. "I'll miss you too." He didn't sound like he meant it. He got back in the car. I watched him pull around the circular drive. He didn't glance back. His eyes were on his phone. I picked up my bag and walked into the lobby. I would never be the same person who walked out. Ridgecrest was beautiful. Exposed timber beams, stone fireplace, a view of the valley that made you feel appropriately small. I was at the front desk, sliding my ID across the counter, watching the clerk pull up my reservation, when a woman in a dark blazer with a staff badge appeared at my left elbow. She was mid-40s, short brown hair, something deliberate in the way she moved. "Ma'am, would you follow me for just a moment? I have a quick question about your booking." "Is something wrong with the room?" "Nothing like that." Her voice was measured, careful. "This will only take a few minutes." She led me down a short hallway off the lobby, through a door marked Staff and Gatsgreffy's, into a small office with 2 chairs and a window looking out on the side parking lot. She closed the door. "My name is Gail," she said. "I'm the director of guest safety here. I need to ask you something directly." She looked at me steadily. "The man who dropped you off, is he your husband?" My stomach tightened. "Yes, why?" "After he left you at the entrance, he pulled over near the lower parking area. One of my team noticed him making a phone call. He wasn't leaving. He sat in his car with a clear line of sight to the lobby doors. She paused. My staff member was close enough to hear part of what he said. "She folded her hands on the desk," he said. "She's checked in. Tell the guide to stay on schedule. Policy doesn't pay if there's any question about how it happened." The room went very quiet. "We've called the county sheriff," Gail said. "A deputy is already on the way. I know this is not what you expected today, and I know this is frightening. But I need to ask, do you know anything about a life insurance policy taken out in your name?" "No, I don't have one. Not that I know of." Gail nodded slowly. "That's what I was afraid of." The deputy arrived within 20 minutes. He was followed 30 minutes after that by a detective from the county. A quiet, thorough woman named Detective Parrish, who introduced herself with a handshake and sat across from me like she had all the time in the world. She didn't waste it. First question, what did I know about our finances? I told her the truth. Not enough. Aaron managed everything. I transferred my paycheck into our joint account every 2 weeks and trusted the spreadsheets he showed me quarterly. Her second call, I was present for both, was to a financial investigator at the North Carolina Insurance Commission. When someone finally picked up, Parrish read off my name and date of birth. "I have a policy," the investigator said. She read it back. My name, my birth date, $2.1 million, whole life. Beneficiary, Aaron. Effective date, April 14th of that year. Premium paid annually, up front. Has the insured ever been contacted regarding this policy? No record of that. Parrish looked at me. Did you sign a life insurance application? No. They slid paper across the table. I wrote my name 3 times. My hand was shaking. I've looped the first letter of my last name twice since I was 8. A habit my grandmother drilled into me with a Sunday school cursive workbook. The signature on the policy had 1 loop. Clean and simple and entirely wrong. "That's not my signature," I said. "No," Parrish said, "it isn't." She moved to the finances. She had subpoena authority for the joint accounts by the second hour. What came back was the story I hadn't been allowed to read. Of the $2.4 million from my parents' estate, $1.8 million had been moved in batches between January and August of the previous year into 3 cryptocurrency exchanges. The crypto was now worth roughly $40,000. The remainder had filtered through a Delaware LLC Aaron had created, the kind you set up online for under $100, and disappeared into contractor payments and transfers to a private individual. That individual's name was Lorne Pickett, 44 years old, 2 prior arrests for fraud, 1 for aggravated assault. He had checked into Ridgecrest not as a guest but as a registered outdoor guide, booked through a third-party activity concierge to lead a private hiking excursion for me the following morning. The trail he'd requested access to was a backcountry route that ended near a 400-foot overlook above a creek hollow, remote, off the standard guest map, not monitored by cameras. When resort security, alerted the moment Gail called this in, went to Lorne's room that afternoon, they found GHB in a travel toiletry bottle, a coil of paracord, and printouts that included my photo, my room number, my check-in time, and the overlook's GPS coordinates. I was having coffee at the counter. He had been watching my check-in from the lobby mezzanine when they came for him. Lorne Pickett was arrested at the resort bar at 5:47 p.m. He didn't resist. He looked relieved. That detail stayed with me longer than almost anything else. By 6 o'clock, Aaron's phone records had been subpoenaed through an emergency judicial order. Detective Parrish spread the printout on the table without commentary and let me read. 14 months of messages to a number I didn't recognize. The volume was extraordinary. On days I thought he'd been quiet and withdrawn, home early, distant, scrolling, he'd been sending 40 and 50s messages, love notes, logistics, arguments I wasn't part of. The number belonged to a woman named Tatum. She was 26. She worked remotely for a tech firm in Charlotte. Her company car's GPS logs, subpoenaed within the hour, showed she had visited our neighborhood 18 times in the past year, always between 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon on weekdays, always when I was at the hospital. Parrish had audio from later that evening. They played me the voicemail Aaron had left Tatum at 4:38 p.m., 40 minutes before Lorne was taken into custody. "Hey, she's checked in, everything's on schedule. By tomorrow night it's done. Call me back when you can. I love you." He sounded calm, like he was calling about a meeting that had gone well. Then they played me her response voicemail, the one she'd left 40 minutes later after Aaron was already in handcuffs in the back of a deputy's car. "Aaron, I just heard a county sheriff is asking resort staff about a hiking guide booking. What's happening? Call me back. I'm scared. Aaron, please call me back." Her voice broke. She was scared. I sat there in that small office and thought about what it meant that she was scared. Not sorry. Scared. I found out 3 weeks later that she was 3 months pregnant. I sat in that staff office, off the Ridgecrest lobby for 4 hours. Gail brought me coffee and a bowl of soup I didn't touch. At some point, the October dark came down over the mountains and I could see my reflection in the window, and I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. 7 years. I had spent 7 years with someone who saw me the way you see a problem to be solved. They brought me to the county sheriff's substation the next morning to give a full statement. Aaron had been held overnight. He'd asked for a lawyer at 7 p.m. The lawyer arrived at 9. By 10, they had offered him a deal he didn't take. At 11, he agreed to talk. I wasn't in the room. I watched through a monitor in the next office, Detective Parrish beside me, as Aaron sat across from a county prosecutor named Merritt, a composed man who spread a folder on the table and did not raise his voice once in the hour that followed. The plan had started in February, Aaron said. He'd lost the last significant chunk of my inheritance on a leveraged trade that collapsed overnight. He owed $87,000 to a private lender he'd found through an online investors forum, a man who charged 30% interest and communicated through encrypted apps. The lender's deadline was November 1st. Aaron had no viable path to that number. He had researched life insurance payouts. He had looked up hiking trail accidents, accidental falls, how investigations worked, what made a coroner rule something unintentional. The state's forensic team recovered a Google search dated January 19th. How long does accidental death insurance payout take if no witnesses? He found Lorne through a private forum. $8,000 up front, $72,000 on completion. He had forged my signature using a scanned birthday card I'd signed for his mother 3 years before. He'd found an insurance company whose entire application process was digital. Merritt asked, "When you dropped your wife off at the resort yesterday afternoon, what did you believe would happen to her?" Aaron was quiet for a long time. "Then, I thought she'd go on the morning hike. The guide would get her to the overlook. It would look like she slipped, like an accident. And then? Then I'd file the claim, pay the debt, start over." "With Tatum?" "Yes." "Did she know about the guide? About what was planned for the trail?" Aaron looked at his hands. "She knew I was going to handle it. She didn't ask how." Merritt closed the folder. I turned away from the monitor before they walked Aaron out. I had heard everything I needed to hear. The Watauga County Grand Jury returned an indictment in November. Charges: conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, solicitation of murder, insurance fraud, forgery, and felony theft exceeding $100,000. Tatum was charged separately. She accepted a plea agreement in January, 14 months minimum security, 3 years probation, and full cooperation with the prosecution. At her sentencing hearing, she said she hadn't known about Lorne Pickett. The judge noted that not asking is its own kind of knowing. Aaron went to trial in the spring. I testified on the 3rd day. I sat in the witness chair and told the jury about the birthday card. I told them about the quarterly spreadsheets. I told them about the morning he made me coffee and watched me drink it, and smiled in a way that, looking back, I understand now was relief. The relief of a man who believed he had already solved the problem. The jury deliberated for 4 days. My best friend Faye flew in from Phoenix, and every morning while I waited, we walked the river trail downtown, and she didn't tell me it would be okay. She just walked with me. That was enough. On a Thursday at 2 in the afternoon, I got the call. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge, patient, silver-haired, 19 years on the bench, said that premeditation is not desperation. It is a choice made over months by someone who understood exactly what they were doing and who they were doing it to. She sentenced him to 38 years. He will be eligible for parole at 71. I sat in the gallery and felt something I didn't have a word for. Not relief, exactly. Something quieter, a kind of stillness, like the moment after a very long noise finally stops. I went back to work in December. The inheritance, the $40,000 in crypto that hadn't been touched, was returned to me after the courts unwound the accounts. It wasn't much, but it was mine again. I started therapy in January with a counselor named Dr. Baird, who had an office above a hardware store in downtown Asheville and a coffee maker that ran constantly. She didn't ask me to perform recovery. She asked questions. What do I want my life to look like? What did I know before I was willing to know it? What does it mean to trust someone? And what does it mean to trust yourself? That last question took months. Gail and I still talk. She retired from Ridgecrest the following summer after 21 years, and we meet for coffee when she comes through Asheville. The first time, 3 months after the trial, she told me she'd almost let it go. The call she'd overheard in the parking lot. She'd thought, it's probably nothing, probably business. But something about the way he didn't look up, she said. He watched the lobby entrance the whole time he was talking. Not the road, not the cars, the door you'd walked through. I've thought about that a lot since then. about how much space separates almost from not, how thin that margin is, how many things had to land exactly as they did. Gail's staff member positioned at that spot, Aaron parked where someone could hear. Lorne's arrest happening before Saturday morning, before I ever put on hiking boots and walked out the back of the property, with a stranger who knew every step of that trail. I'm 32 now. I have a one-bedroom apartment with good afternoon light and a small balcony, where I've been learning to grow rosemary in a pot. Faye texts most mornings. I'm training for a half marathon. I read my own account statements. I know what a beneficiary designation looks like and why it matters. I know a lot of things I wish I'd known before. But here's what I've settled on. Grief makes you want to hand the weight to someone else. When you're in the deepest part of it, when breathing already takes everything you have, you look for anyone who says, "I'll carry that." And if you love them, if you have spent years building your sense of the world partly around them, you let them. Because love is partly just repeated trust, and grief is the moment when that trust becomes the most dangerous thing you hold. The morning Aaron drove me into the mountains, I remember noticing that his hands looked wrong on the steering wheel. Too tight, too deliberate. I remember having that thought and then telling myself I was reading into things. I remember choosing not to ask. Knowing is not the hard part. The hard part is letting yourself know. If someone in your life is managing all the money, handling all the paperwork, dealing with all the things you're too exhausted to look at, look anyway. Look now. Not when you feel ready. You may never feel ready, and waiting for ready is sometimes how the window closes. I almost didn't get a second chance. I got one because a woman in a parking lot noticed a man who couldn't take his eyes off a door his wife had just walked through and decided to trust what she saw. Trust what you see, even when it frightens you, especially then.